And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 74. This is the Week 14 recap episode where the Cincinnati Bengals finally got back on the winning track, got a victory 27-20 against the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Lots of things to discuss and break down in this game. Coming to you a couple days after the game took place on Monday night. Because I got to be honest with you, as much as I am a fan of the Bengals, I think what I am, number one, is a fan of football. And if you want to know more about who I am, if you're brand new to the show for some reason, you can go back and check out episode 0. I explain more about that. I think the biggest thing is, number one, I'm a fan of football. Like Greg Rosenthal says, he's like, I'm a fan of football. So I'm a football nerd, football junkie. So I love football. And as a football fan, this game was terrible. This game was not good at all. Neither one of these teams deserved to win. And right after the game ended, I had like super negative, just frustrated emotions going on. And I was like, that would not be a great state of mind to be recording a podcast that's supposed to be about the Bengals. And I'm going to come in here and take a dump all over the Bengals right after they won. Not great podcasting material, I didn't think. So now it's been a couple days. I'm able to think about this game with more of a level head. And I still don't feel great about it, but at least I can appreciate the game just for the fact that they won. I mean, heck, they've only won 5 of these games so far this entire season. So you got to appreciate it while you can have it. So the thing about this game that was so frustrating was it didn't feel like the Bengals went out and dominated and won the game. Like I said, neither team played especially well. There were so many penalties by both teams, and the refereeing, the officiating was bad. A lot of missed calls, obvious missed calls. And Joe Burrow got injured in this game. That wasn't good. There was another guy who got like horrifically injured. He may never even play again, maybe not even walk again. I don't even know what this guy's status is at this point. Lots of negative things. And then the play that everybody is going to be talking about is this horrible special teams gaffe. As Dan Horde said live on the radio, a huge blunder by the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys had the perfect opportunity to win the game and just completely shot themselves in the foot, in the genitals, in the head, shot themselves everywhere you could possibly shoot yourself, and lost the game. It wasn't like the Bengals won it. It felt more like the Cowboys lost. And they had like every opportunity to come back and do something, and they didn't do anything. It was like the Bengals were trying to let the Cowboys win, and the Cowboys said, no effing way. We are losing this game no matter what. It was incredible. And, I was talking to one of my friends who is a Cowboys fan, and I was frustrated for him because I wanted to see a good ending of a entertaining football game between two competent football teams. I didn't see a ton of competent football, especially on defense. Both of these defenses sucked bad in this game. Oh, God, watching this game was nice. So this may have been the perfect game to switch over to one of those Manning casts or the Simpsons alternate broadcast. There was multiple, you could watch it in Spanish. There was so many different simultaneous broadcasts of this one game. So that was an incredible achievement just in and of itself. I don't know if a Bengals game has ever been covered by so many different angles. And because of the fact that they're playing against the Dallas Cowboys, the quote-unquote America's team, there's not just, the Cowboys have their own media conglomerate, their own media channel, like 10 times bigger than what the Bengals do. A lot of Bengals fans, not to hate on the Bengals, but they have a little bit of a lower budget than, let's say, the Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys are doing a lot more stuff, and they got a lot more interest behind the team, and so that means way more reporters are asking the questions. And To his credit, you see the owner, Jerry Jones, out there answering reporters' questions immediately after the game. And that was one of maybe my biggest takeaway, surprisingly, from this whole thing. I know everybody wants to hear about Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. We'll get to that. Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase did amazing things as they have been doing this entire season. So that's nothing new. But what was new to me as a follower of the game was the great contrast to see the owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, out there after a loss with a gaggle of reporters surrounding him. And he's taking questions and talking about what happened on the last play of the game that kind of decided it, and the questions, and different players, and they're asking him about the coaches and the decisions they made, and he's giving answers. I wouldn't necessarily say they were great answers or honest answers. They're Jerry Jones salesperson type answers, but he's at least out there in person with a camera in his face and microphones answering the questions. Meanwhile, when's the last time anybody's seen or heard from Bengals ownership? Mike Brown has not. He's, like I said, he's like the groundhog on Groundhog's Day. You never see him except for one time a year during training camp. He comes out, gives one 15-minute interview. That's it for the entire season. We don't see from anybody in Bengals management to give any explanations about any of these games. So whether you love or hate Jerry Jones, I'll at least got to give him credit. Even though I'm not a fan of the Cowboys, I have to give him credit because he goes way further in terms of public outreach for the team than what I see from the Bengals on a consistent basis. But anyway, let's get into this game. Bengals came into this game against the Cowboys favored by 4.5 points. So it wasn't a total surprise that they won this game. I'd say maybe the way that they won it was a little bit surprising. But Joe Burrow continued to have a great performance. Over 300 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Again, this was the 4th straight game that he went over 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. I think the record is 5. So we'll have to see if Joe Burrow is able to keep that going continuously. But another remarkable performance from Ja'Marr Chase, who came in chasing the league leader Brock Bowers in receptions. Ja'Marr Chase has now retaken the lead in receptions. He had 14 catches in this game for 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did all that on 14 targets, long of 40-yard touchdown, which sealed the game for the Bengals at the end, where he caught it on the sidelines. Joe Burrow threw it. It was just a simple out route, deep out. Bengals, it was inside the 2-minute warning. Ja'Marr Chase just turned it up and outran everybody into the end zone for a touchdown. But another great performance by him. Solid performance out of Chase Brown, the running back. He added 65 yards on receiving and also 58 yards on 14 carries in the run game. So Chase Brown had a 19-yard touchdown added to this game. So he's over 100 scrimmage yards combined between rushing and receiving. Chase Brown, second-year running back, continues to impress me and exceed, honestly, my expectations for what he can do as an every down back. We're seeing him develop in pass protection. He's out there for 3rd down. So he's becoming an every down back. The only question is, how many games can he do this? He's a young guy, still got fresh legs and all that. But playing every down in the NFL as a running back through a 17, the rest of this season after Zach Moss went down, they need to get Khalil Herbert a little bit more involved, which they did. He had a couple carries in this game and 1 catch. But Bengals offensively continued to not show any signs of slowing down. But, 27 points. It should have been maybe a little bit more considering Dallas has been giving up an average of 28 this season. So a little bit below average what you would expect. But Bengals defense made some plays. I'm not going to say they played well. There were definitely some defensive breakdowns at moments in this game. But at least they made some plays because they have been literally making no plays at all. And so it was a breath of fresh air to finally see Geno Stone, free safety, do something anything, like make any plays at all. He finally had an interception, his second interception, which was questionable, honestly. It looked like it hit the ground and it probably should have been ruled incomplete, but for whatever reason, they gave the Bengals the benefit of the doubt and said Geno Stone caught it. Looked like it should have been incomplete to me. And Bill Belichick. It's not just me, because if you watch the Manicast, Bill Belichick was on there and he immediately was all over it. He was like, oh, that's incomplete. It touched the ground. I was thinking the same thing, Bill Belichick. So greatest coach of all time and me are on the same page. Probably was incomplete. But the Bengals got the break. It seemed like the Bengals got all the breaks in this game. And in a season where the Bengals haven't got much luck to speak of at all, finally everything swung back in their favor. And they got seemingly like almost every call. There was one call where Joe Burrow got obviously face masked. And even on that play, he fumbled, and then the Bengals recovered the fumble. So even on the play where they got unlucky and Joe Burrow got face masked and it wasn't called, they still recovered the fumble. It could have been way worse. But lots of things like that were happening in this game. One turnover that went in the Bengals' favor that was called, and then there was another moment in the game where Andre Joseph had a questionable play where he looked like he caught it, but he juggled it, and as soon as he turned upfield, the ball got poked out, recovered by the Cowboys, and then they said after review, actually, it was an incomplete pass, and so the Bengals retained possession. So in that case, it was a non-turnover that when you look at it, it's questionable there too, because he had it for that split second where he had both feet down and he had control of the ball. It was close to being a fumble, and maybe arguably if you're a Cowboys fan, you could say that it should have been a fumble. I know if I were a Cowboys fan, I would be feeling very frustrated after this game. And the players, you could see just all of them. So let's cut to the chase. The biggest play in this game was after that Joe Burrow, it's late in the fourth quarter. It's tied 20-20, and both teams have gone back and forth with mostly just defensive breakdowns and a lot of Ja'Marr Chase, but a slow drip of Ja'Marr Chase. So Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, former defensive coordinator for the Bengals, right? He had an interesting strategy in this game. He decided, because they had all their top defensive stars back. They had Trevon Diggs, they had Deron Bland, who are both Pro Bowl cornerbacks when they're healthy, and some of the top defensive backs in the league. So they made the conscious decision they weren't going to double team Ja'Marr Chase on every play. And Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher and the rest of the offensive coaches had a good plan of moving Ja'Marr Chase around to inside, outside, left, right, all over the field. He was in the backfield, going in motion, moving him all over the Bengals' offensive formations to get him in different matchups to make it even more difficult for the Cowboys to single out their focus onto Ja'Marr Chase. But even still, the Bengals were able to get the ball in his hands early and often. Like I said, 18 targets, and he even had a rushing attempt in this game for 14 yards and a first down. So as Zach Taylor has been saying, most of our offense has been geared to get the ball to Ja'Marr Chase, and finally they were successful in it. Like I said, sometimes they've only been getting Ja'Marr like 6 or 7 targets, which is unacceptable to me. Like I said at the beginning, before they even played any games, before game 1, I said they got to get the ball in Ja'Marr Chase's hand minimum 10 times per game, or the coaches effed up. So in this game, they did not F up. They gave the ball to Ja'Marr Chase. But Bengals had it. Joe Burrow got face masked on 3rd and long, fumbled, Bengals recovered. But Zach Taylor is losing his mind. He's like, oh, that should have been a face mask. As Joe Buck said on the broadcast, wide-eyed Zach Taylor, because Zach Taylor always just has this like stupefied, bewildered look on his face with his mouth hanging wide. He's not saying anything. His mouth is hanging wide open. Looks just like a weirdo, but he's going crazy. No face mask on Joe Burrow. At this point, Joe Burrow's getting beat up. They don't call it. Bengals have to punt. It looks like this is going to be going back over to the Cowboys with a little bit of time left, and Cowboys have plenty of time, lots of timeouts. They'll be able to drive down and kick a game-deciding field goal to break this tie that's going into 2020 at the end of half, or could go to overtime. I was thinking maybe if this game goes to overtime, then it could be interesting. But on the punt, Bengals have some kind of blocking breakdown, and former Bengal linebacker Nick Vigil comes untouched up through the middle. I think it was past Muma Jongmeta, number 45, gets past him, blocks Ryan Rico's punt. So at this point, everybody's going crazy in the stands because they block the punt. The ball flies up in the air and bounces and rolls forward towards the Cowboys' side. At this moment, one of the Cowboys players, Amani Oruwariye from Penn State, not Ohio State, but Penn State, this guy, I don't know what his explanation was. He said he was just trying to make a play, which doesn't make any sense. For some reason, he tried to touch the ball, and he didn't, or he was successful in touching it. He tried to grab the ball and run and advance it. But instead of that, the ball went straight through his hands and into one of the Bengals players. The Muma Jongmeta actually recovered the fumble. So he's the one who missed the block that allowed the Bengals punt to get blocked. The same guy ran down the field after the block punt and recovered it after the Cowboys player tried to pick it up and failed to do so, went right through his hands into one of the Bengals players. And so that is such a mental error by the Cowboys at that moment in the game, because it went from being Cowboys' ball, all of a sudden the Bengals recover it. It's their ball, 1st and 10. Right after that play is when the Bengals threw it to Ja'Marr Chase and he ran for the touchdown. So such a swing, because the Cowboys defense thought they were successful in getting the Bengals offense off the field. They stopped them and they blocked the punt. Then one of these guys loses his mind, acts like this is like middle school football, and tries to pick up the punt after he gets blocked, goes through his hands, and it's Bengals ball. And you can see all the Cowboys players are totally exasperated, like they got their hands on their head, like, what the F are you doing? Like, what? Why would you touch it? And you can see the coach, the special teams coach, is going over to this guy after this play, like having a serious heart-to-heart conversation. And he said, the head coach after the game said, that's a hard learning moment for that guy. Like, yeah, he might learn by not being on the team next year. Well, I don't know. But it's, this day and age, I'm sure there's a lot of Cowboys fans who are having negative emotions for that guy right now. And if it's lucky that this game didn't really matter for both teams. It's most likely that neither one of these teams is going to make it to the playoffs or do anything in the postseason. So this game probably didn't matter. But if this had been like a game to go to the Super Bowl for the Cowboys or something like that, that guy Oruwariye, he would have to go into like witness protection program, like just move, go live in a hotel, change his name, all kinds of stuff. He would have to go into hiding because the nation of Cowboys fans would be out to get to this guy, because all the teammates, you could even say like Micah Parsons on the sidelines, they just showed him close up with a camera right on him. He's got his helmet off and he's just like, why, what are you doing? So yeah, just a terrible way to end the game for Cowboys especially. But even as a Bengals fan, like I said, it didn't feel like, great, moment in Bengals history. The Bengals really snatched the victory. It was like, the Cowboys just totally gave the game away to the Bengals, and that's how they won it. That's, I guess, a win is a win, but it's not going to go down as like one of the greatest wins. But it was a rare win. Like this is the first time the Bengals have even beat the Cowboys in 20 years, and the first time they won in Dallas since like the 80s. So this was just a truly remarkable game in a lot of positive and negative ways. After the game, we finally got to see a post-game celebration, and there was a Zach Taylor giving out game balls. It seemed like he gave out like 10 game balls, and I think part of it is at least to do with the fact that they're going to be on Hard Knocks, and he knows the cameras are on him now. Everybody's watching. So the first episode has already come out. Everybody's seen it. And I'm sure these guys try to block out all that stuff. But, all the reporters this week were asking, like, Joe Burrow bought a Batmobile. What's up with the Batmobile? Everybody was asking the questions about Joe Burrow ordering this Batmobile because he said it on this TV show. Everybody's watching this, obviously. Same thing with Zach Taylor. They didn't really have a lot of questions for Zach Taylor because he didn't really say anything that interesting on Hard Knocks. But Zach Taylor, he's probably trying to avoid comments and criticism of himself, but he's not stupid, because even though you didn't hear a lot in the media about Zach Taylor after Hard Knocks, you did definitely hear a lot about the opposing coach for the Steelers, Mike Tomlin. So when Zach Taylor was talking about how it's a great opportunity for the team to go out and show what they're about, it was also a great opportunity for Zach Taylor to represent himself. And not that anybody said anything negative about Zach Taylor, but he's even got to take it a little bit personally that everybody was talking about the other coach and not him. But I know Zach Taylor is real with himself. He knows he doesn't have the same type of personality. That's not who he is. But it felt like in this post-game speech to the team, he was trying to bring a little bit more enthusiasm and personality. And it may have been a little bit manufactured, probably, yeah, but at least he was showing something, like not just a typical ho-hum. At least he was trying to show something. He didn't really get a lot of response back from the players. He was like, right, guys? And they're like, yeah. But he was giving out game balls to everybody. He gave out a game ball to Joseph Osai for having one sack. I mean, it was a good sack, but, one sack, I mean, whatever. Like, he made a good play. All right, cool. He gave a game ball to Cade York, the kicker, for not missing any kicks. That was good. And there was a crazy moment. So Cade York, the LSU grad and Dallas native, the ESPN was all over the story about he has his girlfriend on the sidelines for the Dallas Cowboys. They had a picture of them they put up. And when he came in to kick his first extra point after the Bengals scored their first touchdown in the game, it was a little bit dicey because Bengals had a delay of game penalty somehow. I guess they were just trying to be too calm and be like, okay, new kicker, let's all just, take it easy, nothing crazy. But they forgot to watch the clock, so they had a penalty. And then as they snapped it and they're blowing the whistle, he kicks the ball, and the ball he kicked looked ugly. It was kind of like a duck hook. It still went through the uprights, but it was like, whoa, what kind of kick was that? So they were like, oh, actually, redo penalty, move it back 5 yards. So it's like, oh, God, I hope he makes it. So that the first one is maybe he just had the little jitters. He got it out of his system because the second attempt, straight through, dead center, no problem at all. And then the camera immediately pans to his Dallas Cowboys cheerleader's girlfriend, which is crazy. The Bengals just scored a touchdown, and then they cut the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader going, oh, thank the Lord. She's like, praise God, praise God. And it was just odd. You don't normally see the opposing team's cheerleaders celebrating when the other team scores a touchdown. So just a weird game all around. But yeah, back to Zach Taylor. He's giving out the game balls after, and then he goes, and he might not want it, but I'm giving out a game ball to Joe Burrow, because in maybe the last time he gave out game balls, they showed he gave out a game ball to Joe Burrow, and as soon as Joe Burrow caught it, he threw it right back to the equipment manager. Like, I don't even want this stupid game ball. So Joe Burrow has higher aspirations than giving out game balls in losing seasons to teams that are bad. But that's the thing. It's like the only teams that the Bengals seem to be able to beat this season are teams that are no good. So they can beat the bad teams. They can't beat the good teams. And luckily, they got some more bad teams coming up on the schedule. So they may actually win a couple more of these games. I don't think they don't really have any chance to make it to the playoffs, though, realistically. But they could at least be tolerable to watch. That's the thing, is the trade-off of if they lose games, it probably won't be that fun to watch. If they're winning, at least they'll be more fun to watch. Let's not worry about the draft, because people in the draft can come and go. Let's just worry about these games we have right now. So this game was a win for the Bengals over the Cowboys, which you can't say happens very often. I think that was most of the positive takeaways I had from this game. Well, the other thing was, like I said, on the defensive side, we saw a few more people getting sacked. Like I mentioned, Osai, B.J. Hill got a sack, and Trey Hendrickson also had one of his signature sacks. So Bengals had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 5 passes defended, including number 42, Marco Wilson. I was like, who in the F is that? Number 42. I never even heard of this guy. So Bengals have obviously been dealing with a lot of injuries in the secondary. They had DJ Turner go out with that hurt collarbone, clavicle. He's still not on injured reserve, which is weird. I don't understand why they are still using a roster spot for DJ Turner. I would assume it's just because they don't want to pay anybody extra money. But Bengals are getting back other players. So they had DJ Ivey. He's coming back from the ACL injury he suffered late last season. I think it was in December of last year against Tennessee at home, if I'm correct. Same game that DJ Reader went out. Bad day for DJs. But anyway, DJ Ivey made a big tackle for loss or short gain in this. Josh Newton was out there. Josh Newton gets called for like holding penalties every play, though. It seems like every time they throw at Josh Newton, holding penalty. But he had a couple tackles in this game. But Marco Wilson, they signed him. He's been in the league for a few seasons. I think they signed him from the Patriots. He might have been released by the Patriots or waived, and the Bengals picked him up during the bye week or recently. But he made a couple of good plays where, to be honest, he was in much better position than Cam Taylor-Britt and some of these other corners, Josh Newton even. So Marco Wilson was making plays on the ball, and he's probably going to get some more snaps at outside cornerback. It was interesting. They were using Cam Taylor-Britt as like an inside corner on CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb is their tall, big, more physical wide receiver, and Cam Taylor-Britt is a bigger defensive back. So they have him sometimes lined up inside, traveling, even going man-to-man in motion with CeeDee Lamb all the way across the field. That was an interesting way. And basically getting Cam Taylor-Britt not playing boundary cornerback. I think Cam Taylor-Britt, when he came in out of Nebraska, he was a second-round pick for the Bengals. Again, why did we trade up for Cam Taylor-Britt? But he was more of a hybrid safety nickel cornerback. He didn't necessarily play outside man-to-man coverage cornerback when he was in college. And since he's got to the NFL, just to get him on the field, I feel like the Bengals have said, okay, you're going to play outside cornerback because that's what I need. And outside cornerbacks make a lot of money. They make more money than a nickel cornerback or a safety. So I'm sure Cam Taylor-Britt is like, well, if I could theoretically play this outside position and get a big contract, let me see if I could do that. I think this year's results have shown that Cam Taylor-Britt isn't that good at outside cornerback, and he'd probably be more comfortable playing maybe inside at safety. The Bengals could do like a swap. They could move Cam Taylor-Britt to safety, move Dax Hill, keep him at cornerback, and just swap those two players into their more natural positions, maybe, and it could work out better. Because Cam Taylor-Britt, like I said, Marco Wilson came in out of nowhere and played better than Cam Taylor-Britt in coverage. So, yeah, if some guy off the street is playing better than your supposed guy who was supposed to be like the number one lockdown corner, he might have to change positions. There was a play, to his credit, I guess you would call it a pass deflection. There's a play where Cowboys got confused. The receivers ran into each other, and the ball bounced off Cam Taylor-Britt's chest, and that's where Geno Stone got the interception because it bounced off Cam Taylor-Britt and into Geno Stone's hands. So I don't know if Cam Taylor-Britt just didn't really see the ball coming. That's one of the things people they take for granted when you're playing inside at night in a dome. It's hard to see, especially when the background that you're looking against is a crowd full of people wearing different colored clothes. It's not a uniform background. Plus, you've got the lights in your eyes. So there was multiple times where players on both teams were just having trouble locating the ball, it looked like. There was one play where Ja'Marr Chase, he was wide open. Joe Burrow threw the ball. It would have been a touchdown, but it bounced off the top of Ja'Marr Chase's head. Literally, Joe Burrow threw the ball so perfectly, He hit Ja'Marr Chase, but it was 40 yards down the field. It wasn't like, 5 yards away. It was a deep pass, deep fade. Ja'Marr Chase had good position, and it was decent coverage by the Cowboys too. It wasn't terrible coverage, but the pass was so perfect, bang, off the top of Ja'Marr Chase's head. And so I think he just had a little bit of trouble locating that ball in the air. Same thing, there's another pass that hit Ja'Marr Chase in the chest where it just went through his hands. Maybe it got obstructed at the line of scrimmage, but they talked about Chase Brown having LASIK eye surgery this offseason because last year he was having some issues dropping passes. And to be honest, Chase Brown dropped some passes this year too, so it wasn't 100% on the LASIK eye surgery. But to his credit, he had the touchdown catch in this game and did a good job of toe tapping up the sidelines. The referee needed some LASIK eye surgery. Maybe I need some LASIK tongue surgery. But they called Chase Brown out of bounds initially, and then he ran and jumped into the Salvation Army kettle, which you're not supposed to do. I think might be a fine for celebrating using a prop. Players have been fined for that in previous years, but then they didn't fine him. So I don't know. We'll have to see if he gets fined. He said, I don't get paid enough money to be paying fines. But the camera was right in his face, and then he turned around and saw that actually they ruled he was out of bounds. And then he goes, no, right as he's in the kettle. He's like, no way. So it actually, after review, it was a touchdown. But he didn't get to celebrate. He didn't get to do a dance or anything. He had to go sit on the sidelines. So that a ruined celebration. No fun league again. But we saw some of the defensive line at least looking a little bit better. Myles Murphy had 4 tackles in this game, better than nothing. Jermaine Pratt made a couple plays. He missed a couple tackles too, but Jermaine Pratt and Akeem Davis-Gaither at least broke up some passes, didn't get a ton of penalties. Offensive line, though, for the Bengals did have a lot of penalties. There was at least 3 holding penalties, one on Amarius Mims, on Micah Parsons on a screen, which is weird. You usually want to let the defensive players go, but Amarius Mims got beat so quickly that I guess he decided he still needed to hold even on the screen. Bill Belichick did not care for this one bit. He was like a grumpy old man on the broadcast, like, oh my God, what are you doing holding on a screenplay? You're supposed to let him go. Oh my. I can't imagine Bill Belichick is interviewing to supposedly the North Carolina Tar Heels' next college football coach. I can't imagine him dealing with college kids like, what are you kids doing? You're supposed to do it like this. He doesn't care anything about college kids. He said he wants to run like a professional program. He wants to be a professional football coach. I would not hire Bill Belichick to coach college football, like 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds. Like, what are you doing? Bill Belichick is gross. I don't like Bill Belichick. Even if he was a success, it was mostly Tom Brady. Tom Brady did all that. Not that I like Tom Brady either, but back to this game. So I would say that the Bengals defense, up and down. Sam Hubbard, only 1 tackle, not a whole lot. So they may have to start transitioning Sam Hubbard out of the lineup. We'll probably see more Joseph Osai, Myles Murphy, and anybody else they can get who can rush the passer. But coaching staff-wise, this was a game where I felt like Bengals, for once, didn't get completely outcoached. They seemed to have a good scheme. This plan was to get Ja'Marr Chase the ball. They were successful in doing that. And I mean, I can't say that the Cowboys were unsuccessful necessarily because Ja'Marr Chase is the best wide receiver in the NFL. So you can't hope to stop him. You can only contain him, right? So they didn't give up too many huge plays. And the other thing is they mostly stopped T. Higgins. And T. Higgins, I haven't really mentioned him at all. And after the game, they were, answering questions about Joe Burrow was saying how this was the first time that he, Ja'Marr Chase, and T. Higgins went out to be captains before the game. T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase don't have the C captain on their chest. That maybe they didn't get voted on it by their teammates and coaches. I don't know how they decide the team captains. But it's Ted Karras and Joe Burrow are the offensive team captains. But they said, what was that like going out as captains? They were talking about how the three of them together were a good combination. And Joe Burrow said how he wants to get T. Higgins re-signed. He's on a 1-year franchise tag where he's making $21.8 million this season, but nothing guaranteed beyond that. And he was obviously looking for a trade in the offseason. They don't know what's going to happen. So there was conversation. Joe Burrow was saying, backing his guy, backing T. Higgins. And he did the same thing for Ja'Marr Chase, because they were saying, doesn't this just prove that Ja'Marr Chase is worth all the money that he's been asking for? And Joe Burrow said he's worth every penny and more. So Joe Burrow said he can't imagine what it would be like to play, and he doesn't want to find out what it's like to play without Ja'Marr Chase on his team. So he did everything to put his, backing behind Ja'Marr Chase, and that's evident through Ja'Marr Chase's performance. Like, he's unquestionably got all the stats to back it up. It's obvious at this point that he deserves a new contract, and the Bengals have said that they're going to take care of him. It's just a matter of when they're going to do it. I think, again, nobody is getting any answers from Mike Brown. He's probably sitting back counting his money saying, we're getting all this production out of Ja'Marr Chase this season, and we're only paying him $5 million. Aren't we smart? So I guess, but the Bengals don't have a lot of wins to go along with that production from Ja'Marr Chase. But from T. Higgins' perspective, Joe Burrow was saying that he backs T. Higgins as well, but T. Higgins, 2 catches for 23 yards on 5 targets and a couple of drops. And one was a pretty bad drop where he had it right in his breadbasket and it went right through his hands. Another one could have been a touchdown. Maybe should have been a touchdown. It was 3rd and long. Bengals had it in the red zone. It looked like a on-target pass to T. Higgins from Joe Burrow, fade out to the right. T. Higgins was one-on-one man coverage on a smaller defensive back. Joe Burrow threw it up high where only T. Higgins could get it, and T just, again, had a little bit maybe trouble locating it in the air, didn't make a good adjustment, kind of went up with one hand instead of getting 2 hands on the ball, and ball just got tipped out of bounds, incomplete. Joe Burrow came off shaking his head. He looked very frustrated on that, and I think it was because he thought it should have been a touchdown. I think it was a good pass from Joe Burrow, as it typically is. I mean, Joe Burrow is, throwing for a 75% completion rate. So most of Joe Burrow, and in fact, there was numerous drops in this game. I mentioned the one from Andre Iosivas. There was numerous plays to Ja'Marr Chase where he dropped, and this one to T. Higgins. So Joe Burrow could have been almost closer to 85% completion. He was on fire tonight. So it wasn't that he was missing a lot of passes. It was T. Higgins just not making the plays. And plays that he probably expects himself could and should be making, especially if he wants to be in that conversation for receivers like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, all these guys who got paid $25+ million in the offseason. If T. Higgins wants to get paid like that, he needs to start making some plays. And it's not just me saying this. I'm glad that T. Higgins came out after the game in the interviews and said, because they were asking him, what do you think about Joe Burrow having your back? And he was like, yeah, that's fine, but I didn't really play. He said, I didn't play good. Is correct English. I didn't play well, T. Higgins, but who am I? T. Higgins makes $22 million, so he can say I didn't play good all he wants. T. Higgins didn't play well, I would say, and he would be the first to agree. But, it's only one game, but he's been kind of on a rough streak lately. He's had some production, but he's also had some drops. Too much inconsistency out of a receiver who's supposed to be at the top of the league. And that's why he doesn't have the production of a Ja'Marr Chase, beyond the fact that he's not as physically durable. He's had those pulled muscle injuries in his legs that have kept him out of half the games this season. So hopefully this next game against the Tennessee Titans, when T is going to be returning to his home state where he was Mr. Football twice in this, and he's got his name up in the Tennessee Titans Nissan Stadium. So hopefully T has a bounce back performance in the next game. And he usually does against, when he's in his home state. But we also saw, as good as the defense played, there were some lapses, as you would expect. There was one play where they had Mike Hilton lined up on 4th and 2 down near the goal line, one-on-one man coverage with CeeDee Lamb, who's got, at least 6 inches of height over Mike Hilton and speed. And so, tough assignment for Mike Hilton. Cowboys ended up, Cooper Rush did a good job of getting the pass away before Geno Stone could get there with the blitz, and dropped it right like a rainbow into the back of the end zone. CeeDee Lamb was wide open for a touchdown on a deep kind of fade out. Mike Hilton was not even anywhere within 5 yards. He even gave up running at that point because he knew he had no chance. The only question was whether Cooper Rush was going to keep the pass in bounds, and he barely did. It was close. CeeDee Lamb had to do a toe tap, so he could have made it an easier catch for CeeDee Lamb, but Cowboys started off the game scoring. It was a bad start for the Bengals. Bengals had 3 and out on offense, couldn't get anything going, had to punt, gave the ball back to the Cowboys, and they had a 9-play, 60-yard drive right down the Bengals defense and went up 7-0. To their credit, Bengals came back in the first quarter and had an 11-play, 70-yard drive. Nothing too explosive, but it was a Ja'Marr Chase 5-yard touchdown pass from Joe Burrow to tie it up. Cowboys went ahead again with a field goal in the second quarter to make it 10-7. Then later, that was when Chase Brown scored that 19-yard catch and run up the left sidelines for the touchdown, and the 8-yard extra point made it 14-10 Bengals with 3 minutes to go, and Bengals were able to get a field goal right before halftime to go into the half 17-10. Everything was looking good for the Bengals. Cowboys came out of halftime with a 8-play, 70-yard drive where I think this was one where CeeDee Lamb, it was like a handoff or a short pass. Oh, no, it was a short pass to CeeDee Lamb. Missed tackle from Jermaine Pratt. CeeDee Lamb ran like all the way back across the field up the Bengals sidelines for like a 40-yard catch and run. Bad defense. There was a lot of missed tackles on the running back, Rico Dowdle, but Cowboys were able to convert a 3-yard Brandon Cooks touchdown pass to get it back to 17-17 tie. Cowboys took the lead in the fourth quarter with a 47-yard Brandon Aubrey field goal after a 13-play, 54-yard drive ended short. I think this may have been some penalties on this drive, maybe a sack. So the defenses were starting to figure out, and there was a lot of self-destruction going on by both these offenses. Bengals, to their credit, had a long drive, came back to tie it up at 20-20. Then there was a lot of back and forth. And like I said, then came the critical play where Cowboys had the block punt. And then for some reason, the guy lost his mind, tried to pick it up, and Bengals recovered. And then that's when Ja'Marr Chase won it with the game-ending 27-20 go-ahead touchdown. Cowboys did have a chance at the very end of the game. And this was maybe the most frustrating, or one of the most, if it wasn't the block punt, this last drive by the Cowboys offense really illustrated the difference in this game, which was the two quarterbacks. So as good as Joe Burrow for the Bengals played, Cooper Rush, the quarterback for the Cowboys, he had moments of okay play, but mostly he was not good in this game at all. I think he only completed about 50% of his passes. 16 for 31, 183 yards. He had the 2 touchdowns, but also that interception. But he had 4 sacks, and the decision-making, especially on this last drive of the game, Cowboys had about, I think, 57 seconds left and 3 timeouts. They completed, if I go to the play-by-play real quick here, I'll just go to this last drive because it made me so mad as a fan of football. Like I said, 1st and 10, Cowboys complete a pass for 15 yards out to their own 45-yard line. They call timeout. 53 seconds left. They've got 2 timeouts left. 1st and 10, for some reason, Cooper Rush decides to run like he's going to take off and do something with it, but he's not fast at all. He only gets 3 yards and gets tackled by Myles Murphy. So in that situation, just throwing it incomplete, just throw into the sidelines, throw it into the dirt, just do anything to preserve taking that second timeout. For some reason, he doesn't, they're like, okay, we can't call timeout yet. So they go no huddle, they get up, and then they immediately get sacked. and then they have to call their second timeout. So just a horrible sequence of events by Cooper Rush where they need game on the line. Okay, 1st and 10, 53 seconds. Why is he trying to run? Okay, fine. 2nd and 7, take a sack, and the clock is still running at that point. So, okay, have to burn their second timeout, and they're at their own 40-yard line, 3rd and 15, with one timeout left and 31 seconds. 3rd and 15, they don't try to get it all back in one play. They throw 8-yard pass to Jake Ferguson, call their last timeout with 24 seconds left. 4th and 7, 24 seconds left, no timeouts. They need a touchdown to tie. Ball is snapped. CeeDee Lamb is lined up on the left side. They've got 3 receivers on the right. CeeDee Lamb's one-on-one with Cam Taylor-Britt. He beats Cam Taylor-Britt off the snap, is wide open on a slant over the middle, and not just for a flash. He's open for like multiple seconds, running wide open, waving his hands, jumping up and down, basically trying to use mental telepathy to the quarterback, say like, please throw me the ball, because CeeDee Lamb is, the equivalent of Ja'Marr Chase before the Cowboys. He, in the offseason, got a huge contract. They're paying CeeDee Lamb almost $30 million a year. And so if anybody should be getting the ball in this situation on 4th and 7, under 30 seconds left in the game, you got to look for your number one receiver in that scenario. For whatever reason, you go back and watch the replay. Cooper Rush, the quarterback, doesn't even look at him. Not even once. Doesn't even check. He should be the number one option. Quarterback doesn't even look. Instead, he's looking over to the right at there's 2 receivers on the right. There's Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks. I think he was trying to throw it to Ferguson, but the ball went like 8 feet over his head. Totally uncatchable. Ball lands in between Cooks and Ferguson. Game over. Ball goes back to the Bengals. They take a knee. But just that sequence of plays when I know, and this is why, people don't have a lot of high expectations for backup quarterbacks. And this is why Bengals were probably favored to win this game, because when you have a backup quarterback in there who can't make plays with his legs, can't escape the sack when there's a pass rush on, like Joe Burrow was so slippery in this game. It's amazing. It's like, I don't understand how defenders still haven't figured out how to sack Joe Burrow, how he's able to get away, it seems like, almost every time. They have him dead to rights. He's sacked 100%. And then all of a sudden, last second, he just moves out of the way and does just enough. I mean, I know he's bigger and stronger than he looks, probably. He looks kind of tall and thin, and Joe Burrow looks like he would be easy to tackle. But he's remarkably strong and able to get away from those arm tackles and just step up and away and make throws on the run. That's the other thing. Cooper Rush was not able to throw while running at all. He didn't even look like, not even a professional quarterback. He didn't even look like a good college quarterback. He was throwing the ball in the dirt, over guys' heads, just totally inaccurate when he had to move his feet. So the Bengals, even though they got three sacks in this game, but just the fact of making Cooper Rush move forced him into making bad plays. So that's why, he doesn't make, they have Dak Prescott at quarterback who's on injured reserve for the rest of the year. He's highest paid player in the league. Obviously, there's going to be a step down in talent, but it's just so noticeable and so frustrating to me to watch Cooper Rush just go out there and totally blow the opportunity when the Cowboys, they probably weren't going to win the game anyway, but at least could have been more interesting than what we saw out of the Cowboys. Didn't even get it across midfield. Just terrible use of the clock, poor execution. So there was questions after the game like, are you going to switch quarterbacks after this? We'll see. But Cowboys don't have a lot of great. Trey Lance, I don't know if he would have performed any better. He probably would have thrown more interceptions. So it's a trade. Obviously, Trey Lance would be more athletic than Cooper Rush and would have been able to move. But I don't know about the decision-making for Trey Lance if he would have been able to do anything. Bengals probably would have won no matter which quarterback the Cowboys played in this game. But in the end, both teams come out of this game at 5-8, so neither one is going to do especially much. So if I were some fan that didn't really care, maybe I would have checked out this other alternate broadcast, like the Simpsons broadcast. I just checked out like some of the YouTube highlights of the Simpsons broadcast because I don't have Disney Plus or ESPN Plus or whatever it is. And I don't know what they were trying to do. It felt kind of unnecessary. Like, who is this for? Because it didn't seem especially... Do children like The Simpsons? Do children know what The Simpsons are? If you're like, older adult, you might like The Simpsons, but then why would you be watching this dumbed down version? Because it was weird. They were trying to do... They had like animated version of all the players in this simulation to try to mimic what's going on in real time. And then they had announcers. The announcing was weird because they would say like, oh, now Joe Burrow has been replaced at quarterback by Bart Simpson. And now Bart Simpson is actually playing quarterback for the Bengals. And Bart Simpson's throwing a pass and doing all this. And so they were announcing it like Bart Simpson was playing for the Bengals instead of Joe Burrow, which is weird. Because like, do they think kids are stupid and like the cartoon characters are actually playing the game of football, or like are they trying to trick the kids? I remember, like, how young do these kids have to be that they think that the cartoon characters are playing football? I don't know. I mean, I know there's a willing suspension of disbelief you have to have sometimes when you're watching movies or different types of media, but I don't think I could do it. I don't know who this was for, but it was weird. And it was the announcers, because like Dan Orlovsky, he's an actual football player. He wasn't totally buying into it at first. He was like, oh, Lisa Simpson, aka T. Higgins, just caught the pass. And then they were kind of like, oh, no, you can't be, you gotta say Lisa Simpson. No. So he eventually like figured out, oh, I'm supposed to just like act like this is for real, huh? And not a real football game. Oh, okay. It was just weird. They had him like reading like, Simpsons related quotes, like somebody scored a touchdown and they were like, oh, touch diddly down. Yeah, I don't know. It just didn't work for me. I'm glad that most games are not broadcast in this way. And I don't know what the return on investment is for this. Like, are people signing up for these services to watch a game this way? I don't get it. But whatever, more eyeballs on the Bengals as a franchise who can discover this team. I guess that's better. Not for me, but I guess Mike Brown and the rest of the Bengals universe in general. But yeah, it was a win, but for some reason, I didn't feel good. And then, kind of adding to that, the day after the game, what's the story that comes out? Not something cool, positive. Oh, Joe Burrow's house got broken into during Monday Night Football. So while they're winning this game, somebody is in Joe Burrow's house stealing his belongings. Now, what kind of shit is that? Apparently, this is a thing now where, high-profile athletes, when people know you're not going to be at your house if you're playing in this game at this specific time, oh, that's the perfect time to rob this guy. So they got to get some kind of, you got to sign up for like a security system and like guards at the house now. Apparently, when people know that you're going to be playing in a game, you need to have somebody watching your shit. So just disappointing in a number of ways during this game and then after the game. But I'll be interested to see how this all plays on Hard Knocks. I haven't watched the latest episode yet that just came out last night. I haven't got a chance to watch it because I'm catching up on so much other stuff. I had to watch all the interviews with the Bengals players and then the Cowboys players. I wanted to see what they said. The Cowboys had to say. Cowboys were obviously like just in disbelief, shocked. They couldn't believe they lost a game like that. The coach, he didn't know what to say. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that came out of this game. But now we've got a short week, and it's going to be another game coming up against the Titans in Nashville. Another road game. This time, let's see if the Bengals can get a win against an AFC in-conference opponent. Because this win against the Cowboys was great, but NFC wins aren't really what they need the most at this point. If the Bengals are going to have any shot, no matter how small it is, to get into the playoffs. They need some wins against conference opponents. So that will be something to discuss in the next episode. But if you've listened all the way this far, don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate you for listening. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.